How to deal with out-of-scope requirements. Out-of-scope is when the client asks for something which was not initially previewed to be within the project scope. In this case, you are in trouble because the client is requesting something that will take time and take energy of your team without being counted initially and included in the project budget and schedule. So you can conclude here that out-of-scope happens for predictive projects and not for agile projects. For agile projects, there is iterations, and if there is a new request at the end of the iteration, just we prioritize this new request and we add it to the next iteration, and that's it. So as a basic rule in the agile approach, we are welcoming the change because we have the ability to include them in the next few iterations. But in the case of predictive projects, it's really a problem because all the planning is already set and the baseline was established for the project, and any changes that comes down the road during the execution phase are considered as problems and considered as change requests. So when this happens, you should be clear about that. If a client comes to you asking for something that you did not count in your planning or in your statement of work, you should tell them clearly that this is out of scope and this have an impact on the project schedule and the project budget. So the first thing is to be clear about that, to be transparent about that. You can just share the statement of work or the project plan with your client or the relevant stakeholder who asked for the change and demonstrate to them that this request is out of scope. But sometimes this not sufficient because sometimes this requirement is kind of hidden. They meant something, but you understand something else. In this case, you try to negotiate with the client in order to reach out a solution that satisfies both of you. But as a general rule, if something happens beyond your power as a project manager, you can tell the client that you should bring this up to the management and you can ask the change control board for approval. For example, when I worked as a project manager in telecommunication industry, the client sometimes asked for something out of scope. In this case, I will tell them I can do that, but I need to consult with my upper management or my line manager in order to confirm whether this could be considered as a change request or not. So this way they know that there is an administrative procedures that they have to follow, and you have to explain this administrative procedures in the beginning so they be clear about what they should do in case of new requirements. Now, if the requirement is approved, you need to ask them for all the details needed to succeed that change request. You need to ask them what happens if we don't implement this change request. What's the scope of this change request? What's the timeline of the change request? By what time you want this change request to be implemented? And you ask it for any detail that you find relevant in order to successfully implement the change request. That's very important because once you are going to implement the change request, it could have an impact on other existing features, and you might not encounter an easy change or easy implementation as you thought it will be. So you need to take into consideration all the consequences and all the impact for that change request. Take into consideration if you are implementing a change request just for free without adding schedule or budget to your client, you should mention that. You should get credit for that extra effort. But don't do that all the time, and don't do that without the approval of the line manager and the change committee. So that's how you can limit the number of change requests and how you can manage and deal with change requests when it happens.